Listen up, recruit. If you already set up your resolution, press A to move on. If not, we need to get your screen set up, because we don't want sloppy equipment messing up our mission. So follow me. First step, soldier, is identification. If you have a high-definition TV, we need to make sure it is selected. This little contraption on the back of your console should be flipped to HD TV if you got it, or TV if you don't. In a minute, you might need to push the guide, but not now, soldier. Just pay attention to the instructions. From the guide, you'll need to push Y to go to the Xbox dashboard. When you're there, go to the System blade, Console Settings, then select Display. Choose a screen resolution to match whatever the best resolution your TV supports. So here's what the system tells us your settings are. If this doesn't look right, go back to the dashboard to change it. We got work to do. If you know your resolution is fine, we can move right along to the next step. Now, look at these Covenant bastards and make sure their shields look like a perfect circle. Not shaped like an oval or an egg, but a perfect circle. We're checking your aspect ratio. What's an aspect ratio? It's the shape and proportion of your screen, fool! If you got a true circle already, then you're good to go. Now that your resolution is set, you need to grab the remote for your display and find the picture controls. That's where you can mess with your contrast, brightness, sharpness, and color. Then you're going to pick up your controller and select A for the first calibration test. Go to the brightness control on your monitor remote. Now I want you to turn your brightness all the way down until you can't see the insignia. Just do it. That's an order. Then gradually turn it back up until you can just see the UNSC insignia. We had to scare these grunts pretty bad so we can complete this next test. Grab your remote again and look for your set's contrast. Turn the contrast up so you can't see the grunts. And don't leave this up for any length of time or it could damage your display. Now gradually turn down the contrast till they just reappear. Got it? Good. This pole behind them should not be bent. If it is bent, the contrast is too high. Lower it, or the white gets too bright, or what we call blooming. All good. You got some talent for taking orders. Now, if you got that blue filter, look at your screen through it and adjust your color or saturation control until the pretty lady appears to be a single, smooth blue color. Color saturation is different on every screen, so don't expect any help from me. Experiment. Use your initiative. She needs to be a nice, solid blue color. When you're satisfied, move on to the next test. She still needs a bit more work to get her looking her best. Now use that same filter and adjust the tint control until she looks her smooth, blue, absolute best. Now listen up, soldier. We're changing sharpness. Look in your sets menu and see if you have a sharpness control. If you do, you're going to adjust the sharpness so the chief looks right. You want to make sure the edges of his armor are clean and crisp, not gritty and fuzzy. Get a move on. You're almost done. Just a quick check of your audio setup. We're going to make sure your surround sound is copacetic.
Welcome to the DVD surround sound test. Speaker on that side. Speaker on that side. Speaker behind you over there. Speaker behind you over there. Center speaker.
Ain't it glorious? Now we're gonna spend some quality time looking at how nice we got you set up. Now get back to the war, soldier. Johnson out. Listen up, recruit. If you already set up your resolution, press A to move on. If not, listen.
Hello, my name is Chris Butcher, and I'm an engineering lead here at Bungie Studios.
We have a crack team of networking specialists here, whose sole job is making sure Halo 3 runs great on Xbox Live.
But you have to do your part, set up your home network right, because if that sucks, there's nothing we can do.
To show you how to set up your network, I took a field trip into the woods of western Washington State to the home of the Candlin family. Dave Candlin works at Bungie as a graphic designer, so I figured he'd have the perfect home setup. Dave said, "Great, we'll just be home relaxing with our 6 kids. Come by anytime."
Where's Riley?
As it turns out, Dave and Marcy are just as good at setting up a home network as they are at managing their kids.
Hey Dave, so show me what you got.
So this is my office. Pretty cool, huh?
Like any good nerd, Dave's got a whole collection of computers connected to his home network. It sounds great, but what happens when the family wants to use the internet and all Dave really wants to do is play some Halo?
Guys, how much longer are you gonna be?
Guys,
Guys.
guys.
Rule number 1. For the best Xbox Live experience, make sure you kick the rest of your family off your home network.
Of course, it won't matter if your connection is too weak. Rule number 2, get a good network connection. You need lots of bandwidth for playing games, both downstream and upstream bandwidth for receiving and sending data.
Some connections are great for browsing the web, but they have no bandwidth for sending data. That's bad for gaming. You can't shoot people when they're shooting you.
So what's the best type of internet connection?
Fiber optic cable.
But
It's kind of hard to find.
what else?
DSL.
Problem?
Kind of costs a lot, and they don't pay me that much at Bungie.
Go find someone who cares. What else?
Cable modem.
Which is what you have.
Right.
But what's the problem with that?
A lot of neighbors sharing the same cable company. You said you were gonna be off at 9 o'clock.
Right, Dave. Last option?
Dial-up, but you don't expect that to work, do you?
All I'm saying is we tested it, and it works.
But it isn't much fun.
So from best to worst, here are the choices: fiber optic cable, DSL, cable modem, or dial-up. Of course, if you subscribe to a crappy internet service provider that goes down frequently, none of this will matter.
47 hours, 26 minutes.
Rule number 3, make sure you choose an ISP with a decent service record and a good helpline. Of course, paying your bill on time also helps.
Hi, this is Helen. Can I help you? Hello?
Finally, the all-important question of your router. A lot of you have routers running your home networks, and if they aren't configured right, we can't help you.
You might be able to log on to Xbox Live, but you won't be able to hook up with all the people you want to. Rule number 4, try to get a router which has the Xbox Live compatible or certified for Windows Vista logo.
If you can't find one, at least get one that supports Universal Plug and Play, or UPnP.
To test whether your router's working, go to your Xbox dashboard and select Test Xbox Live Connection. Rule number 5, you need your NAT type at the bottom to say open. If you have a wireless router, here's rule number 6. Make sure you don't put it near other appliances like computer monitors or cordless phones. Anything using the 2.4 GHz spectrum will interfere. Rule number 7 is about location. First of all, don't put your wireless router in a corner.
Keep it away from metal objects like filing cabinets. Oh, and while you're keeping your router away from certain things,
Here you go.
Thank you.
Okay, don't put it on the furniture, all right?
Okay.
be careful what you put on it as well.
Dad, what you doing?
Oh, just check an email, sweetie.
Oh. Bye.
See ya.
A good place for it is up high on a bookcase.
Yeah, it's good, Dave.
So here they are, 7 rules of home networking. Kick everyone else off, get the best network connection possible, choose a decent ISP, make sure you have a compatible router, make sure your NAT type reads open, observe the 2.4 GHz rule, and pick a good location for your router. If you follow all these rules, you'll have so much fun, you'll be coming up with new and creative ways to spend more time with your Xbox.
And you'll also be able to have an awesome time playing Halo 3 online with your family.
Intermittently.
What?
Let me
No,
show you.
just Dave. Keep it here.
Just try not to have too much fun.
I said no more fighting.
Thanks, Dave, for showing us how not to set up your home network.
No worries, Chris.
I could have sworn Dave said he had 6 kids.
No animals or Candlin family members were harmed in the making of this video segment, although a few egos were bruised. Do not attempt to make a sophisticated high-end instructional video like this at home. The warnings and advice contained in this video are intended solely for the purpose of helping Halo fans to set up their home network. If you still don't have any fun at Halo 3, it's your own damn fault. If on the other hand you become totally and permanently addicted and suddenly find yourself without job, car, home, wife, kids, or any life whatsoever outside the Halo universe, that's pretty much what we intended. Don't accept candy from strangers, don't run with scissors, and don't forget to finish the fight.
It's 6:03 in the morning. We're the forearm team.
Did you write the bug?
Closing on bug number 25,000. I'd say we'd probably get it today.
It's just a stream of bugs. This morning I was up at 4 assigning bugs too. It never ends.
24/7. There's always someone here.
I usually get in between 6:30 and 7 and leave after, 7 or 8.
Time goes by pretty quick. I think it's about 7 o'clock. I get a free breakfast when I show up early enough.
There's a lot of food consumed in this building. I would be really frightened to count the number of calories.
The day at Punchy starts with the obligatory
Run through security.
You have like 3 seconds to get to the door and actually open it before it relocks.
The warehouse,
Over there's the multiplayer engineering pod.
where our genius, wildly talented programmers sit and make problems for artists, typically. Maybe not Luke Timmons.
All along the far back wall, we have environment art.
Marcus, how would you describe this pod?
This particular pod? Command Central.
Crunch is the period of game development when everyone on the team is there working late, trying to cram as much stuff in as he can.
There's not really that much pressure until you see the countdown clocks. It's kind of a doom clock.
The anxiety level's pretty high. I think I left at 1:30 last night.
The pressure's on, but usually that's where people come out and do their best work.
I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing today.
I don't either.
This used to be a Lowe's hardware store, I believe.
This building used to be True Value Hardware.
Or maybe it was a supermarket.
From what I know now, they do Halo in here.
There's a second floor, but it's only on the very back section of the building. It's actually, I think, above the bathrooms.
The bottom floor is for development. The people on the top floor kind of run the stuff that's kind of external to the development of the game.
The full-time employees don't want to be disturbed. Therefore, don't use the front door if you're not working near the front door.
The only people in the studio who actually have offices are the sound guys. That door that's open right over there is the door to Marty's famous Ivory Tower office.
When it says email or die, that means he's composing.
This is the bowels of Bungie. Several people believe that my main role is to push the coffee cup around the studio. This little tiny area here is artists that are doing multiplayer map design. They have plants, they have Chris Carney memorabilia.
The strangest thing about the building, it's got to be the no windows.
You have no idea what the weather's like outside.
Cloudy.
It's a little bit like a bunker.
So everybody can hear everything you're saying all the time.
There's supposed to be this kind of unwritten rule that if somebody has their headphones on, that you don't come and tap them on the back and ask them a question. But I think it's an unwritten rule because nobody's really paying attention to it.
The acoustics are fantastic in here. I could hear somebody in test fart, and they're all the way on the other side of the building.
When over from there, there's the design pod with all the guys working on the single-player missions.
The design pit. It's really meaningless without these guys. Except Miller.
Whatever door.
It's actually kind of tough to tell what time it is.
Don't they do that in jails? They don't put clocks anywhere?
It's the building that just has this sort of casino-like atmosphere.
Las Vegas.
They make you walk past all these aisles so you go to a computer and maybe sit down and do some work.
Morning. Sucked.
Number 69 is lemongrass chicken for Sean. Figure out who gets what.
It happens every crunch.
8, 10, 12 weeks, you haven't had a meal at home.
We can't live off of McDonald's every day.
We started doing this because we were doing crunch, and we're like, yeah, everybody starts eating the free food.
He's the reason why we have the weigh-in. He was a biscuit away.
Estimated body fat, and estimated lean body weight.
I haven't weighed myself for years.
Yeah, that's all
Or do you go to the
that matters
bathroom,
to
take a massive dump, you're like, this will compensate.
Sometimes that saves 2 pounds. Who knows?
People in the neighborhood that's just looky-loos, want to know what's going on. Occasionally they walk by and they open the door and they can see this figure here. And it just looks like a place they want to see what's inside, you know? So they try to trick me. And so far I've caught all of them.
Harold is the studio manager.
Harold Ryan is my boss.
He sits there. Harold actually has the smallest desk in the company.
This is where we go whenever we need help with the light mapper. How's the light mapper doing today?
Excellent.
Hey, Luis, how's the light mapper doing today?
Not too well.
See, it's the...
This is sort of the central pod of test right here. There's Jamie Evans, our test lead, hard at work, as usual.
Hey, rumor has it there's a tester here with a tattoo.
Yeah?
Can we see it? Exciting, wasn't it?
I think I can count the number of women that work on Bungie on one hand.
There's women here?
There's a few, yeah. 1, 2, 3.
The interesting thing about our fax machine is it doesn't actually receive faxes. So it's just kind of this little quirky thing in the system that is just insanely inefficient.
There's 3 bathrooms.
2 here, and then there's
one up at the front, which is sort of for guests, and it's in the safe zone.
And then there's one upstairs that they just put in. One out of every 3 times I go to the bathroom, I actually have to wait in line.
One bathroom for 200 guys.
2 or 3 stalls for the guys, and I don't know how many stalls. How many stalls are there for the girls?
There's equal number.
Really? How do you know that?
Another for 3 women.
And I've spent my entire life waiting in lines.
How crazy is that?
Have you been outside when people are dropping the deuce?
No.
Like we hacky sack outside, and you can smell every scent. It's like this huge gust of. I'm not kidding you. You can't get on your skin. Feel that. Feel that.
No, I'm not touching that. Just like I'm not going to touch your hacky sack from now on.
When you're really in the thick of crunch, you start having dreams about work. You're in here for 20 hours a day, and you're not seeing your family. And those are the things I think that give you the battle scars.
Okay, so that's Damiani's.
11 hours, either free breakfast or free dinner, but not both.
There's actually a false floor. There's all the network cables that run underneath that.
How many miles of wire in the building?
Millions of miles of network cables.
So 175 ports times 12 cables each.
That's probably too high.
Divided by 5280 for miles. That's 49.7 miles of cable.
It's 50 miles.
Moving all of the testers from over there to over here so that we're next to Jamie.
That's right. Everybody closer, better communication.
It's Jamie's master plan.
We're like an organic...
Yes, we really seaweed.
Some of the people that come in tomorrow, they're going to be in for a pretty big surprise. Those guys kind of knew that they were moving. This guy, I don't think knew.
We're a floating island of manness.
I don't know what it's like actually under the false floor. They say that people who crunched a little too hard, you might find some of them down there.
Crunch is the seed of divorce.
Nothing got done today.
I've been fixing a single bug all day, and it still isn't fixed.
It is the seed of stress headaches.
It's a really big mess. This is just busted.
Crunch is also incredibly fun.
Sweet. Yes.
Ice cream?
Ice cream.
Delivered just for you.
Wow.
Make that. Oh, come on, you need another one. You can't eat just one.
I already had 2.
I think everybody wants to work in a place where they're friends and where they enjoy coming to work and they do things that are cool.
Oh, it's only 10:30. Wait till midnight or so. That's when it gets nuts.
This is what matters, guys. Yes, there's a lot of playing around, but this is what matters. Today, this is today, and this is content complete.
This was from a housewarming party for Mike Zach. Dave wore these green underwear. I ended up with them at the end of the party, washed them, of course, and then brought them back.
Hey, Kiss, how you doing today?
Hey, good evening, sir. Here's the keys.
Thank you.
Crunch is when everyone is pretty much sleeping here.
Sometimes brushing your teeth, the good ideas don't come, but the harsh realities come.
Oh, 1 in the morning. Wow, it's already Friday.
Making sure that people take baths and stuff like that because we're in close proximity.
You know, I don't actually know a whole lot about the shaft, but we had to do an SDK upgrade, and so I was here till 2:30, so somebody gave me the shaft.
It is the middle of the night, and we're going to be playing the beta with a group of guys in Japan. Ganbarimasho. Good night, Green Johnny. How did that feel for you?
It's 6 o'clock in the morning, and I have been here working almost overnight.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning.
Good, good.
I went home and come back, and they stayed. They didn't even go home 24, 28 hours a shift. Thanks, sir.
Actually, I take half-hour break, close my eyes for 20 minutes.
So hey, take care. Have a good day, Jerome. Have a good shift.
Yeah, I think it might take me, half hour or 1 hour more. After I solve that, I will be super happy. I will tell you, I think I fixed that problem.
Yeah, so the thing with pulling an all-nighter is you get the good parking spot the next day.
Good morning, Phil. Good morning, gentlemen. Morning, Phil. Back at it again? Back at it. Back at it. All right, have a good morning. You too.
lot goes into making a game, and there's lots of experimentation, and right up until the point where it's burned on a disc, every decision is critiqued.
I don't think it's necessary.
Even more.
It's the big door that brings up that other grenade.
When the fans see it, it's already gone through all the tribulations. It's a much more harrowing process than I think most of the fans understand.
Everybody has a different opinion on what drives Halo. It's the art, it's environments, it's the graphics. And the most important part to me is story.
Whether it's a love story between the Chief and Cortana or an action-packed explosion fest, we have to negotiate how we get our stories in there.
We went through a full year of pre-production on this project. The story is one of the first things we sit down and talk about when we go to create a game.
And if the Chief just has like his head sort of like reaction to what,
The stories are always created the same way. First off, a group of people agreed that this is the story that we want to tell.
What's going to happen to the Chief? What's going to happen to Cortana? We had been working on this story nonstop, making compromise after compromise because there were a lot of things that different people didn't agree on.
Dude, the story should be about Earth getting destroyed, or let's show the Chief's face. That'd be a really good idea.
Radio for VTOL. Heavy lift gear.
We write the first draft of the script, but it's not great. Man, do I really want to give all this credit to Marty?
I didn't see any shape to this story. Nothing happy, nothing sad, nothing intense.
But a premature firing will destroy the arc.
It's like, I think it needs more punch.
Unacceptable! Unacceptable!
What it really needs is some death.
You actually want to get to the point where the player goes, well, wait a minute, I've been this character for 3 games. They can't possibly kill me.
By having the reality of death part of the story, it did actually introduce this tone of heroism.
Johnson, sound off.
There's no sense of heroic action if there's no real consequences.
Get out of here!
Something that's really important is that our characters feel real.
Do it.
Is Miranda coming across as strong enough?
Now.
Does the Arbiter have enough vengeance built up in him to really push that sword into truth?
You must be silenced.
But the story that we're telling is the story of a human conflict with an aggressive adversarial species, the Covenant.
One of the keys to the success of the story is we didn't pump a lot of time into figuring out who the Master Chief was and why he was a ghost in the shell. We thought he is a husk. He's a big green suit of armor that you move around.
There's something good about having the Master Chief essentially be a blank slate. That helps each individual person connect to the character.
You found me, but so much of me is wrong.
The main personal relationship you have in the game is with an AI called Cortana.
I do know how to pick 'em.
At least one of our writers refers to her as your girlfriend.
Cortana's every girlfriend that we've ever had. No, just kidding. She's your little guardian angel.
Got an escape plan?
Thought I'd try shooting my way out.
Cortana plays a huge role in the fiction of this game, and we didn't want people to forget about her.
No, I don't want to chance a remote detonation. I need to stay here.
By the end of Halo 2, the Chief is separated from Cortana for the first time.
After I'm through with truth.
They'll make a girl a promise.
If you know you can't keep it.
You need to constantly remind players of what they're missing, that this thing is something worth going after. But if it was just a straight, now go find her, here's a map, people wouldn't care.
Chief, it's not safe. The Gravemind, it knows I'm in the system.
Having that moment where you actually see her with the Gravemind fighting for her existence, it was just a really powerful idea for us.
Hurry, Chief. The Ark. There isn't much time.
In Halo 3, we're obviously picking up where Halo 2 left off.
The Covenant have occupied Earth. Humanity is sort of down to its last defenses.
The elites and the brutes are destroying everything that the Prophet of Truth doesn't.
All of the Halos are primed and ready to fire.
The Flood is out, and who knows where they're heading. An unstoppable, voracious parasite.
You have nothing going for you at the beginning of Halo 3, except for you.
This is as big as it gets.
In games, it's always this fundamental trade-off between immersion and drama.
Wait! We really tried to create this nice, tight, woven mesh of fiction and gameplay.
It is a balance between telling the story and letting the player have their own story.
Is it more satisfying as a player to kill Guilty Spark yourself, or to see the Chief do it in cinematic? But as soon as you make that decision, you're taking that action away from the player.
Figuring that out is really the challenge of telling stories in games.
When you're trying to balance story and gameplay, one can't come at the expense of the other.
The trick is to weave story into those gameplay sequences without interrupting the gameplay.
We're being a lot more cagey about the way we sneak story in.
There's the Cortana channel, there's the Perspective channel, there's the Letterbox channel, which are the traditional cinematics. All of those work together to tell our story across the entire game.
Perspective channel essentially means that Chief is still going to be in the scene, but it's not a letterbox cinematic, but he's not going to talk, and they're going to be really short, and they're mainly just going to focus on the action.
The event is happening in real time. When you press to skip it, instead of going to the end, that event just continues to happen.
It's just one of those little sort of exploratory moments that players can choose to take part in, or they can choose to ignore.
It feels much more like a story that you're experiencing instead of a game with a movie that comes in every once in a while.
There's certain parts of the story that you tell by having Cortana talking in your ear.
It was the coin's fault. I wanted to make you strong.
The Cortana effect is essentially another story channel that we came up with. Because she is with the Flood, she can sort of give you bits and pieces of you know, what's going on, but in this really fractured, fragmented sort of way.
Your mission? Could you watch me die?
We also have a separate storytelling method, which we call the vignettes. It's just a cool little thing where the characters are animated in a very custom way.
You can walk into an environment and you can see a couple brutes beating up a couple Marines.
They're not just standing there looking at the door that you just came through, pointing their weapons at you.
It gives the sense that there's something else greater going on in the story.
One of the things that we've tried really hard to do was make the cinematics directly related to what you just finished doing or what you're about to start doing.
In Halo 3, almost all of our letterbox cinematics start with a player action.
You must activate.
So it flows really nicely from one gameplay segment into the cinematic and out to the other gameplay segment.
I'm sitting here day in and day out working on the cinematics. And every scene that I make, there's this voice in the back of my head saying, what is keeping the player from skipping this? What's keeping the player from hitting a button and just going right to the end?
Ultimately, it's involving the player and making the player really feel that they're in this story.
You want to establish that this is something a little bit more important.
The story that we're trying to tell has higher stakes. Whether we can do that, we won't know until that thing's in people's hands and they're playing.
Design is about the dance. I love the dance.
It can be a little bit of a fight.
It's always a degree of compromise.
Someone comes by your desk and says, that's just not quite right.
Then things change.
You make a cool gun.
Things morph.
The next thing you know, it's a flamethrower.
Things completely get cut.
Bungie giveth and it taketh away.
The design process is not just driven by the story, and it's not just driven by the gameplay.
The development cycle revolves around missions. So at the beginning, when we're concepting missions, you fill it with some sort of challenge.
When I first start out a mission, I will try to get a good high-level set of goals of enemies, weapons, and events. The first phase is repulse the Covenant. And then the second phase, we're trying to have it so the player expands their territory that they have and pushes the neutral and the enemy territory back.
And then the third part of an encounter is what you might call chopping off the head of that encounter. You're really trying to get to the end of the level. There may be a brute chieftain that you've been working your way towards, or a wraith tank.
Once we sort of nail that down at the highest level, we think about what are the cool experiences you can have in that mission with those characters.
2 guys against the player might be tough, but 2 guys against the player when the player has this weapon is suddenly an easy encounter. So now you can put 4 guys in there.
It'd be cool if the Phantom dropped off a sniper jackal. Yeah.
The idea for a mission can start in lots of different places. Sometimes there's some really cool environment that we want to feature.
We had the notion of starting the game in a jungle from the very get-go.
Engineering grasped onto, like, that's going to take a lot of cool rendering, and artists grasped onto that and said that's going to allow for some really cool artwork. Design grasped onto it and said that's going to really sell the gameplay on that first mission.
Here is the first drawing of the jungle, the first mission in the game. We tried to indicate that the early areas would be used for basic movement training, and then moving into combat training, then eventually advanced combat where grenades are introduced and the player's introduced to the concept of flanking. From this, we went to an actual whiteboard where a lot more detail was added in.
A whiteboard contains sort of a rough layout and a list of the different sandbox items that are going to be used in that mission.
Then we'll also start listing out more specifics about the encounters, like where the grunts will be introduced or where the Phantom is going to come in. From here, we went on to Illustrator, and after that, we went into building the mass outs in 3D Studio Max, and we were off and going.
I would say Halo 3 is more of an offense game. It's all about getting in the action.
You gain yourself more cover, you gain yourself a nice weapon, and that sort of starts tipping the scales in your favor.
Every mission has its own feeling, and you don't just get that sense of, oh, I'm going from room to room and just killing more guys.
What we did for this encounter, for example, is the player can take the primary path, which is straight ahead, and take the Covenant head on, or they can take this secondary path, which flanks around the Covenant. So it feels like the player kind of gets to choose from the beginning of the encounter what type of experience they want.
Having a player feel like he did the right choice is probably one of the most rewarding things you can do in a game.
The state we want to keep you in is this constant state of challenge where you're not succeeding, but you know next time if you just did a little bit better, you could.
Oh, come on, man. I'm not spazzing.
In a single-player game, you have relatively limitless control over the experience of the player.
In multiplayer, it's very much a conflict between live participants that you're duking it out with.
When the map design sort of evolves, it needs to be balanced.
Blue team, what are you doing? Oh, God!
If a blue team starts on one side and a red team starts on another, they sort of have an equal arena to play in.
What's a perfect Halo bunker or a tower or a bridge? We're trying to make these ideal little situations, and then from that little situation, put a couple of them together, and that sort of becomes a level.
Design is such a broad concept. Designing a mission could be, I draw on a piece of paper, hey, here's the basic layout. You might take into consideration things like line of sight. You know, you certainly don't want the player to stand at point 1 of the level and see the very end of the level.
We have 2 encounter spaces that can see each other, so all the objects and all the AI are active in both of them at the same time. We're trying to block them off from each other without completely destroying some of the views that we worked really hard to capture. And when Marcus sees it, he's going to kill me.
We have a bunch of systems for telling exactly where the player is and then triggering some event in front of him.
The purpose of creating these invisible trigger volumes is to let the computer know where the player is. So this is a bird's eye view of the first encounter where the player is actually fighting Covenant in outskirts. When the player enters from this side, they will enter this first trigger volume that might spawn enemies or cause a ship to explode in the distance. There's a few side trigger volumes where we have some enemies in those areas, and when the player enters this trigger volume, those enemies actually get afraid of the player, and they'll run away. This is how we would make a trigger volume. And let's say, for example, we want some enemies to spawn in this little basin down there. You would place a trigger volume, you can control the scale of it, and you would want to create a nice, clean line that the player can't get around. You know the player's close to the ground, so they can't actually see over the hill, but you wouldn't want them to be able to stand here because they could actually see the enemy spawn, and they'd spawn out of nowhere. So you're always just looking for a line so that the player can't actually see what's happening. The player crosses a bend, they hit the new trigger volume, and that fight ensues.
If mission designers are like storytellers, I give them words like warthog and explosion to tell different stories.
The basic design for a weapon needs to be fun to shoot and fun to be shot at. The shotgun is all about close range, surprising people. Sniper rifle is long range. Spartan laser is about taking down vehicles.
My favorite weapon is the battle rifle.
I'm quite partial to the sticky grenade.
That 3-shot burst just feels really powerful.
We create situations in which a weapon is going to be the best thing around. But we also do the reverse, where we give you a shotgun, and then the next encounter is going to be all long range, and then all of a sudden you have to find a different solution to the problem.
So for multiplayer, it's really sort of trying to get the weapons placed in the right locations on the map.
How do I get up there? In multiplayer, the players are going to do something that you don't expect. So there's a big difference in how you can react with weapons.
You're looking at how you can sort of balance a power weapon on one side of a map versus a different side of a map.
This is actually really, really hard to balance out and make fun every time because the placement is random and so is the weaponry.
On Valhalla, the Spartan laser is placed right in the center of the map so that each team has an equal chance at getting out to the center where you're taking a lot of risk. And once you've got it, then you're really powerful. It's kind of a gamble, but the payoff is pretty big if you're successful.
It was really getting hard to add new weapons because balancing 40 weapons, you're going to feel like you have a weapon that is a clone of another. So the direction that we took is we added a new set of really, really powerful weapons that you don't really keep for a long time.
We've got an entirely new kind of weapon, the turret weapon, where you walk up to a turret and you yank it off its tripod and then you're walking around and you're in third person.
We just limited the amount of ammunition in the turrets because they're really too powerful.
As new events happen throughout the level, your objectives are often changing, like when the Scarab comes in, for example. You know, it's pretty clear that you've now got a new barrier to being able to complete your overall objective of the mission. In Halo 3, the Scarab is super dangerous. You've got to be smart about how you approach fighting it.
The Scarab was in Halo 2, but it was very scripted.
The way it was actually implemented in the game was boring as hell.
The design was horrible. Like it looked like a basket, like a handle. I'm going shopping. It's horrible.
When you're fighting the Scarab in Halo 2, you had to kill the 2 guys that were driving it, and then he died in a cutscene. That was pretty cool, but it wasn't part of the sandbox. One of the first things we were looking at for Halo 3 was, let's give it an AI, let's let it move about the environment completely freely, let's make it part of the sandbox.
So we want to make it as interactive as possible.
So not only is this thing trying to kill you and all of your allies, but it's almost its own encounter space. It's up to you to figure out exactly what you're going to do to take out that Scarab. If you don't figure it out, well, you're probably going to die.
The end of Halo 3 is the end of the entire trilogy, and we wanted to do something really awesome for the end.
Explosions!
Yes.
Far.
You were telling me half an hour.
Oh God, no, you're not gonna make it.
You want me to drive?
Oh, I want you to fix it so that I won't die when I go full speed. What I was playing was the end in a very unpolished, very rough, very frustrating state.
You've got to build it, you got to play it, you got to say, it's not good, let's try it again.
Every step of the way, you know, I'm going, is this fun? Is it exciting?
As we get toward the end of the project, we're just making smaller changes, tweaking how much damage something does.
We have to make sure that the doorways are the right size.
How's the cover playing out?
We're the ones that have to wire it all up and make it work and make it fun.
Just a little more sped up, I think. Then ultimately, you might have an encounter that plays great.
Jump off there. Jump off here. You should be able to land.
Oh, so close to making that jump. That's awesome.
Sometimes you stumble on it, sometimes you plan for it, but the most important thing is when you recognize it, that you covet it and that you keep it.
The shipping game is always an approximation of the perfect vision. I like not having to be the one who decides when I have to stop, because I would never stop if I had any choice. And then the game would slip, and then we'd all get fired. And even then, I wouldn't want to stop.
Every piece of artwork that you see in the game is built by a community of artists.
The dirt on the tires gets there because someone has to put it there. The scratch on the inner side of the fender because a rock might have jumped up and hit it.
Everything that moves in our game, the wheel on the Warthog rotating, the little antenna bouncing up and down like that, the shotgun spitting out a cartridge.
The walls and the light fixtures, smoke trails, dust effects, lightning, they flesh out the world, make it feel a lot more real.
The guys that have the biggest burden are the environment artists. They have to build, essentially, the entire world.
One of the areas we were working on was a warehouse. When it was handed to me, it was a big box. It was a void. We worked to essentially design the overall look.
You have to create a world that a player just wants to get lost in.
These sweeping alien vistas, these giant foreigner spires, and green rolling hills and blue skies.
It's a stylized realism.
What's important to this space? There's my exit, there are my places to get cover. That gives us a three-dimensional picture, and we start building it.
We'll get the basic forms in, then we'll do a layer basic lighting, then we'll do a layer basic texturing.
The biggest challenge in front of us was how are we going to convert these assets from Halo 2 into this next-gen HD content.
I don't think there are any developers who are happy that it's a high-def world now. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just a pain in the ass for all of us.
You have to scale up. We need to have 4 times the size of textures, 4 times as much content, just to create the same experience that we had with Halo 1 and Halo 2.
It's a brand new console. What we found was more powerful engine, a lot more work for one artist.
Xbox 360, there's screaming for more detail, so we've got to provide it.
This is one of the things that's going to set apart Halo 3 from Halo 2, just the sheer number of tufts of weeds and grass to sort of help them blend into the ground and the terrain. I know that if there's one out of place, like when the game ships, every time I run by that in multiplayer, I'll see that one blade of grass and I'll be very upset, so I tend to get a little obsessive about it.
Art and design is like almost the exact opposite of each other. I'm always trying to add something that he wants to get rid of, or he's trying to add something that I want to get rid of. First-person shooters are given a lot of bad publicity because this room's filled with crates.
We'll give him a beautiful environment, perfectly composed, lit, and then he goes,
I'm just gonna put a few crates. Don't worry, just a few. Then you got purple crates, and you got the green crates. And then there's, oh, don't worry. These crates are only here temporarily. You're gonna turn them into something really cool. And then you find out, so long as it stays exactly the same proportions as a crate.
Our combat rests heavily in the fact that we have a fair amount of cover.
The designer will grab the ugliest crate in the world and go, hey, this is a great place to fight around. And then the artist will come up and go, that's a box, like it's pretty ugly. Here's something cool.
The designer will come in and be like, this is gorgeous, but this is an absolutely awful space to fight bad guys in.
Tell them to drop everything and recraft this.
This space needs to be fun before it's pretty.
Art really likes rolling, beautiful hills and completely open environments, and we're like, what are you gonna do in there? We need to throw crates.
Drive the warthog smoothly.
Yeah, but for infantry encounters.
Oh, my warthog fell over.
One of the things Halo is really known for is the vehicles. Our vehicles really eat into the dirt and bank into turns and have a lot of mass.
Jamie comes to me with an idea for a brute vehicle that was a little bit like a ride-along lawnmower.
It's called the chopper because it will literally chop you up.
Before starting work on the brute chopper, we discussed the brute.
Look, it has soiled itself.
The brutes are taking a lot more precedence in this game. To give the brutes more depth, they need to have a history too. And one of the ways to show a history is vehicles that they created.
So I look at the brutes, I try to imagine what their home world is like. Maybe they're from a place where they hammer ore and there's lava and magnetism. And I say, okay, well, how do I build a magnetized metallic lawnmower that's fun to drive and shoot people with? I'm gonna take Travis's yellow and stick it on the chopper because I think it looks cooler with the tone of the metal. But the hover technologies, it's all Forerunner, Covenant, so it's all gonna be like a bluish purple.
You can think of the brutes as building their stuff like in a chop shop. They go in and just tear the crap out of old Forerunner technology.
To me, the brutes look like guys who ride Harleys. They just do. Large wheels, lots of metal, leather. Our concept artist put a canopy on it, but it started to pull away from what we needed gameplay-wise. We want this to be vulnerable as well as brutal. If there was a canopy behind the brute and the brute passed by you, you couldn't shoot him in the back of the head as he went by. You need balance. And the balance is from the front, don't mess with this. From the back, take it away. The complement to this is the Prowler that Travis Brady worked on.
The Prowler is sort of our brute equivalent to the Warthog. I wanted this to look really vicious from the front, sort of like an anglerfish. You see it's got a fin here. The pipes on the inside are like fish gills. If you've seen any Discovery Channel shows of these anglerfish, they're pretty brutal. They have this massive mouth that like swallows you up. It's got sharp blades, it's got teeth. This looks like something you wouldn't want to get in the front of.
If it burns, bleeds, splatters, drips, smokes, or blows up, I'm in charge of it. Every individual projectile needs to be detected against what type of material it impacts. When you shoot, you leave a decal, which is a small bitmap. If you shoot at the same spot enough times, the system has to be smart enough to say, oh, there's already a decal there, don't draw another one. It's a very complex system.
You got more pixels per screen, which means everything takes more time to create. In Halo 1, we only had one bone in the face, and that was the jaw, and so the jaw would just do this. Halo 3, we're looking at some characters that have over 30 bones, and so now we can do some pretty full expressions.
Oh, come on. Impress me. Stop!
Character rigging 101, which is vertex weighting, and that's where you would assign the vertexes on this face mesh to the skeleton. You can grab the face flags and animate them around and get any kind of facial expression you want. Angry emotions on the eyes, slide them up on the mouth.
There's something about modeling someone that doesn't exist that never really translates as well as modeling someone who does exist. There's personality in your face that's just hard to invent. That's why we thought using our heads would be a good idea. There's a whole ton of people in the game. Michael Wu, Marcus, Damian. I've got a lot of asymmetry in my face, so I have to move the nose one way, the eyes the other, and make sure your self-esteem is in check when you start modeling your own head.
The bread and butter of animation is all about bringing emotion to the game. There's this little unsung rule, the 3-5-7 rule. Design is going to want characters striking other characters to be 3 frames long. So quick, responsive, great for gameplay. In 3 frames, that can be a pose from here to the hit, to back, and then to the neutral again. Animation would like 7 frames, get some more character into it. We could potentially have the character stare the other character down, cock his fist back for the first frame. Second frame, he gets even further. Third frame, he gets even further. And then he starts following through on the consecutive frames until he gets to that 7th frame and hits.
10 minutes later, I'm done with my beautiful expressive melee. That's not a game anymore, it's a movie, unfortunately.
Sometimes we have to edit our animations to cater to that, and sometimes we have to edit them a little too much, and it hurts.
Artists are fantastic bitchers.
Some of us are worse than others.
They hate the idea that their art has to be called done.
It's never done, never done.
You just run out of time.
Poor Lee has been doing storyboards for 2.5 years now on the same scenes and reiterating them.
Which idea would you like to keep? And I say, I want to keep all of them. And then when I do make a choice, they say, well, we were joking, there was no choice. We're taking all your ideas away.
There's a scene that's been my favorite scene right from the beginning, and it's truth is death, right? And the truth is kind of fighting, being floodified. The Arbiter's standing behind him, and with his sword, and it comes right out of his chest, and we're looking at the front of truth. As a director, I'm really married to, and I really want this shot to happen, and we might have to sacrifice other things.
The artists are always going to take it absolutely as far as they can until some engineer comes over and starts throwing things at them and saying, no, you cannot do that.
We're throwing a lot of things at you, multiple characters, multiple vehicles, weapons.
More polys, denser textures, more detail in the textures.
Making sure that the smoke wisps in just the right way.
Artists tend to think broadly outside the box, whereas engineers dream more in black and white.
Artists conceive of something that goes far beyond what the possibilities are and then strive for that and see how close they can get.
It's all about trying to cram as much stuff in as he can.
Every now and then, it'll catch my eye still. Wow, I can't believe we were able to pull that off.
Games are nothing without suspension of disbelief, of you losing yourself in that environment.
They're creating fantasy world, but even fantasy world has some resemblance to real world. If water looks like water and rocks look like rocks and explosions look like explosions, then you are engaged in the plot at a much more visceral level.
The way that the engineers and the artists work together is one of my favorite things about Bungie. You've got these insanely brilliant mathematical types that are really passionate about this new technology.
There have been a lot of ideas that have started from the engineering side, where engineers said, hey, there's this technology I know how to use, or there's this thing I think I can do.
He definitely had a long-term vision about the graphics system. He had some fundamental ideas early on that he thought were going to be really important.
Halo 2 had a water system that looks really good, but it has a lot of limitations. It's pretty convincing from a high angle, but when you're at eye level, the effects breaks down. We were not actually rendering water as geometry. In the beginning, we'll have to do a little bit of selling. We have to say, hey, look at this cool water.
It's going to be awesome. We're going to do weather, we're going to do water. And the artist then gets extremely excited.
The Halo 3 is based on a new platform of Xbox. So in the new generation, we make the water surface animated.
You can interact with it, you can throw things in the water, and it creates ripples, and it looks great.
Probably the most fun thing about the water is that the bodies float in it. So you can shoot people and watch them float downstream.
When we first began our endeavor with building interactive water for Halo 3, we had given examples of small pools of water, little streams, rivers, and that kind of thing.
We just freshly deliver the water, and then the water happened to have ocean waves on it.
What it turned out that we needed a lot more of was small creeks, babbling brooks, or rushing rivers.
Water's pretty tricky. My first attempt yesterday was pretty bad.
I think it's cool.
You think it's cool?
Yeah.
Tell Marcus you think it's cool.
Marcus complaining about it.
Ocean waves in a stream? No, it doesn't work at all.
You want every creation you make to be beautiful, but with limited budgets, it's hard.
If you're trying to integrate some cool things into the game engine, you have a pretty limited budget.
You have to be really strategic with how you plan your assets that way.
So she will create a version of the water tool, and then we'll try it. There'll be some things that we want to use differently from an artistic perspective, and so we give them feedback.
Our
Water shader is pretty highly customizable. The artist can change the murkiness, and you also can change the color of the water. You can change the transparency and choppiness of the wave.
We also have ways for them to paint different parts of the water parameters.
And then the engineer looks at it and goes, oh, wow, I never thought you'd be doing something like that with my system. But that's so cool looking that I want to make a better system for you to do that.
And nobody knew what it was going to turn out like. And then when it came time for the beta, which is when it really, came together, it was awesome.
Pretty soon that you see water shows up in every level. So basically means if you have something cool, they'll actually go out of their ways, making sure that the technology gets used in the right way. So we're more of a partnership than a competition, because everybody wants their level to look the best.
Halo, right from the start, has always been a game about shooting people and having them die. Every different type of gameplay interaction you need in Halo needs to be implemented specifically in the damage system.
Damage is kind of one of the base layers of communication between all of our objects in the game.
The damage system keeps track of all of the interactions where some input is damaging some object in the world.
So one thing that all the objects in the Halo world have is a bounding sphere, which is a simple representation by which we can intersect two objects. The red spheres are active objects, meaning they're actually running animations, so they're going to take up a little more performance. The blue spheres are things that aren't running animations but are updating. And then the yellow spheres are things that are completely inactive, and so they're passed over very quickly when the game's processing. So the bounding spheres are just a coarse way of figuring out what we're going to hit. To go further, you actually need to look at their collision models. This is a set of this green geometry. When we shoot this object here, it's on that green geometry that we spawn all the sparks, and it's what the projectiles actually hit. Through the damage system, we're actually permuting different parts of the object into more destroyed states. So you can see the tires coming off, you can see the chassis changing to more destroyed states.
You take a look at a vehicle like the Warthog, and it's tremendously complicated to set that up.
Fully loaded with a bunch of guys riding in it. That Warthog is made up of probably about 11 different objects.
So when that Warthog is smoking, it's taking a lot of damage, and finally a rocket comes in, and we detect, okay, the rocket has finally struck the Warthog. What needs to happen?
We look at all the different damage sections on the Warthog for hubcaps and tires and things like that. If any of them were particularly near the epicenter of the blast, then we're going to detach them and blow them off and accelerate them away. You just have this cloud of expanding objects that's now going to go flying through the air.
When you sort of trace it through the game, you actually realize that the object system says, oh, well, you're actually going to destroy the vehicle that these guys are in. I need to eject them from the vehicle. Physics says, oh, well, these guys are dead. I'm going to start ragdolling them. AI is, making the guy scream, oh, my God, we've just been killed.
This is the damage being passed from one object to another is the thing that makes these cascading relationships happen.
The relationship between the AI programmers and the mission designers is one of the key communication lines at Bungie.
I think the interaction between design and engineering is that design asks for the sky and engineering delivers the earth.
Because we're engineers, we are really into doing things physically correct.
In a lot of ways, what rules everything is the simulation and sort of the coherence of the sandbox.
The sandbox is all of the characters, and weapons, and vehicles in the game, and how they interact with each other through damage and AI and the player control.
All of the entities that are running around this world have their own rules for how they move.
Everything reacts according to the laws of gravity. Things collide and they bounce off each other.
Jamie's just got tons and tons of different sort of knobs and dials when it comes to physics that he can tweak that can have dramatic changes on how the Warthog drives around in the environment.
The green rectangles are relative velocity, so that's how the tires know how much they're already slipping.
How much friction do you have when you're sliding? What happens when you land nose down on a jump? Can you save it?
The maximum speed that the Warthog can actually go at is a result of all kinds of really complicated sort of system interactions.
How much gravity is applied to that wheel? What's the behavior, on a 20% incline?
The gear ratios of the gears that the Warthog happens to be running in at the time.
These are sort of all the things that just go into getting one vehicle right.
The end result is you have a world that is extremely complicated, obeys lots and lots of rules, but you're able to take advantage of it and make plans and outwit it in a certain way.
Is it engineering's game, or is it art's game, or is it design in charge of everything?
I think it's a collective decisions.
Trying to manage everybody's different passions and keep everybody, happy and productive and working and passionate is hard.
I'm sure that Jamie will tell you that he owns the sandbox, and I'm sure that Damian and the engineers will probably tell you that they own the sandbox, but to me it's pretty clear that the people who own the sandbox are the people who buy the game, and the people who do the kinds of creative things within that sandbox that we could never have dreamed of.
Didn't damage you at all? That's total crap! Wow! I swing and nobody gets hit.
It's not consistent at all.
The grab hammer just really currently is not doing what it's supposed to do. The timing's totally wrong from the time that you press the trigger to the time it inflicts the damage.
Kale, your bug sucks.
Please fix your bug, Kale.
Probably the weirdest bug I've seen so far is one where you were able to get Master Chief's head stuck into the ceiling and his body would just stretch down.
When two people would lunge at one another, there was a possibility for them to actually pass through one another.
Get a person positioned on a rock, and as you're lunging at them, if they drop off the back of the rock, you're going to have to go sailing about half a mile in the air.
It's really difficult to figure out all the different ways somebody is going to play our game.
People will play this in totally bizarre ways.
Kills with just the sword, and they'll just want to go through the game by never using weapons. It really has to change the way that you think about testing the game.
Game testing is an incredibly tedious process. The main reason it's important to test Halo is we add this one new character or one new weapon. Everything we change has a potential to crash the game.
Ooh, face.
The testing of Xbox Live requires hours and hours of automation for our matchmaking. When you have over 100,000 simultaneous users playing your game, it's very complicated and requires lots and lots of boxes.
There's so many interconnections between code and content.
It is a system that whenever you go into it, if you're going to make changes, you'd better be damn sure what you're doing is not completely breaking things.
The key to Bungie's success is not some sort of magic. It's testers that keep the build stable to make sure that everything is as fun as it could be.
We're grunts. We kind of do the dirty work. We all get in about 6 o'clock. In the first 2 hours, we test just to make sure basic things like the level loads, that the player spawns into the level, we can run, jump, fire weapons, exit the game. That has to happen first thing in the morning because, like with the current test we're working on, it's 11,000 lines of test cases. And then the developers, they want to make sure that they have a functioning build that they can then work on that day.
We required the testers to shoot everything, run through everything, jump 15,000 times in the same place to see if it'll break the game.
These are the weapons that failed on the hull of the Wraith.
Wow, okay, let me change the model and make sure that's not an issue.
One of my niches is finding a hole in the world that allows you to get outside the playable area. Each time they fix one, it may create another hole somewhere else because of the geometry. So it's this back and forth battle.
The test team swears they tried to jump from limb to limb in the tree and get on top of that rock, and none of them could do it. And then the first day you see a movie on YouTube where somebody gets on top of the rock and gets outside the world.
Manual testing really is for stuff that we need visual verification. Somebody has to watch what's going on and check a box. It actually works the way that we intended.
So go ahead and do a full 8. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. So that one worked.
When you click campaign on the main menu, it takes you to the campaign UI screen.
When we're looking at player colors, I checked color 1, I checked color 2.
If you want to add something in single player, is this going to up multiplayer in any way?
The difference between multiplayer testing and single player testing is that in multiplayer, you've got a lot more variables that can be going on you can't control.
You can have up to 16 machines in the same game, and there's going to be different network latency and lag.
A lot of times it's just a mistake where they'll transpose a number or leave a decimal point off.
One machine may think that one person's over here, and the other machine may think that the person is over there.
But all of a sudden, that bullet that should have struck you in your left earlobe, it actually grazes right by, and now the whole world has skewed and you've gone out of sync.
What?
We had a crash. We have designers who take a weapon like the shotgun or the sword and they get it to work perfectly on a single box. But then you put it in 2 boxes that are separated. One guy's playing in Maryland and one guy's playing in LA. And then all of a sudden, the designer goes, what the hell happened? This weapon's terrible. It doesn't work at all.
I'm going to invite the Japanese guys to our game now. Eigo hanashimasu ka? Ganbarimashou. What does it feel like to play US to Japan? Because none of us have done it yet. And Luke wrote all the networking code, so.
Anytime you change one line of code, it absolutely can end up in ways you wouldn't expect.
Every time you add a new kind of weapon, adding that sort of complexity can up other weapons.
They're seeing pings of in the 200s.
Changing a value on a weapon could break the way it reloads. Speeding the Warthog up by just a mile an hour at top speed could mean every time you go off a jump of over 5 meters, you die. If you don't test that jump, as soon as you ship the game, the world is screaming because they're dying every time you take the jump.
The way Bungie tests involves everyone. The artist is testing by running the game and adding new textures to it. Designers testing the game by adding a new vehicle or tweaking the raid. Marty, C. Paul, and Jay are testing the game by tweaking audio. It's people sitting at their desk doing work, testing our game.
The emphasis on tests definitely comes from the top.
The studio manager for Bungie right now is Harold Ryan, who was the test manager for Halo 1 and Halo 2.
You can never test enough. We have a dedicated test team in the studio that works on the project from the first day we start on it.
Here, it's a much more methodical, professional approach to testing.
A lot of times you'll find the testers know some of the systems better than the engineers do.
Harold understands exactly what tests can do, and he has high expectations.
Jamie is definitely a Padawan test manager. He has not yet earned his stripes.
Love my job. Yay, are you hiring? For the lifetime of Halo 3, we have like 30,000 bugs in the database, of which 27,000 of them are fixed, but still we have 3,000 bugs that are active in the database while we're adding hundreds of bugs per day from the test team, and it's only going to go up.
It takes about 3 years of testing to test a game, about 20 days of which the game's actually tested outside of Bungie's building.
Microsoft has a group of people devoted to doing user research.
It's called usability testing. We actually run one participant at a time.
Now it's time to get out of here. Ooh, I think he's got me.
It's all about getting inside the player's head.
The whole user research team is a bunch of PhDs in psychology that sort of map out people's experience.
We're looking at how the user feels about this level or that level of that vehicle.
I like how smart these things are. It doesn't do the same thing over and over again.
There's a completely different experience for a designer actually watching other people play the game.
I think I need to go in that cave.
Okay. Everybody? Nope. Being able to stand there with a notepad and just write things down is just totally invaluable.
Even though there's one-way glass in between us and them, you still have to be careful, because if you laugh too loud, it goes right through the glass, and then they can tell that you're laughing.
I want to welcome you guys for today's playtest session. We're not testing you guys, we're testing the game.
The other kind of testing that we do is called play testing, and that's where we try and get a broader sample. When you get 80% of the people with some type of problem, well, then you know you have more of an issue.
I take them very seriously, but our playtests are incredibly painful. I've seen people get stuck in one encounter for 10 minutes. You almost are apologizing. Dude, I'm so sorry. Oh, turn right, please, turn right now.
When we were playtesting the Halo 1 tutorial, we had people getting so frustrated that they just wanted to quit and go home. We had several people ask to stop playing, which is kind of embarrassing as the designer.
We get so much data from testing, not just what's broken and what's buggy, but we get a lot of data about what's fun and what's not fun.
Can the camera still?
You've been punked. There is no Halo 3.
Oh, no.
For Halo 3, we've basically instrumented the entire game. Almost immediately after a playtest, we'll get data that will tell us things that are going to frustrate or confuse or irritate a player.
Just kind of the 6 high-level things that we're collecting in playtest. The fun is up.
So we have a number of ways of representing the data, and the most significant one is to show it visually on a map. If it's a multiplayer level, showing all the spots where people die. If it's a single-player level, showing all the parts where people said they were frustrated.
If we're confused, you can actually click on a data point and it will load up a film of that person and how they died.
Oh my God.
You want to maximize the amount of time the player's having fun.
It's really a difficult thing to do, to make it okay that you die a couple times, but not too many times.
We do a lot of play tests to make sure that everybody else is having fun, but really I only know that it's fun when I'm having fun.
As you're closing a game out, you go through the difficult process of having to decide what things you want to fix, that we call triage. Every time you fix a bug, you have the potential to create many more bugs.
Triage, or Joe calls it blood-sucking vampire whore.
It's like taking a hammer and hammering nails through your... Never mind.
Films are not displaying the multiplayer flashing name when using a headset.
Mislabeled territories on Valhalla. This is insane.
We just gotta power through it because it takes forever. We've already been up here an hour and a half and we just want to finish. And it makes us all good friends too.
We always leave these meetings wanting to kill each other.
Exactly. I like you though. I don't like that guy, but I like you.
A lot of times, design and test are sort of at loggerheads.
The artists and designers are never done. There's always one more thing that could tweak.
We just need to figure out how to get more reinforcements and more waves, add more cover.
You're just shoveling in content, and it's very difficult to keep it bug-free.
Sometimes new code slips in that we don't know about, and that causes me to be a little bit less smiley face. We're like, what? What are you guys doing? Why did you add this?
My job is to make the game more fun, whereas the test team looks at it, their job is to make sure the game is stable. If I'm completely happy, then it means we shouldn't have made the change because it was too risky. And if test is completely happy, then we probably aren't making enough changes. But if we're both sort of unhappy, that's usually the best thing.
If the developer guys didn't put bugs in, we wouldn't have jobs. But luckily enough, the dev guys put a couple bugs in there, and I feel like I have the best job security of the bunch.
Once again, we take a lot of effort to make sure the game is stable, that the game is fun, and that at least 90% of the people out there, they'll have a good time playing it.
There are a couple of crashes that we won't be able to figure out that we'll blame on solar flares or space aliens.
As long as the game doesn't set your house on fire, all the imperfections, I'm perfectly fine with it going out the door.
You never want to let it go. You always want to iterate on it. But if we really believe it's not ready to go out the door, it won't go out the door.
I know you, your past, your future.
We really see audio as an incredibly important thing.
Everything that you hear or see is created by someone. Everything is designed very intentionally.
Halo without its sound is like trying to think of Halo without its graphics or Halo without its gameplay.
For us, audio is all the spoken words and music and sound effects that you hear.
It has to be enhancing the experience and the drama of every situation.
Destroy them, brothers!
You know, if you trick all your senses enough, you're really immersed into it. Then you're not just playing a game, you're playing an experience.
Audio design, they're always at the end of the pipeline.
I build all the different sounds, the rolling sound, and the grinding sound.
We have objects flying around.
The bullet impact sounds.
Shell casings falling.
And the hit sound.
But it'll also generate something based on the surface that it lands on as well. Level of detail is trying to make the sound realistic for the distance of where you're hearing the sound from. When you hear it from across the map, it's going to have much more of kind of a distant, muted crack to it than something than a big, beefy gunfire being fired next to me. It really sounds realistic. Sounds like the newsreels.
We decided, because he didn't want like just regular old gun foley for this brute spike rifle here. So we got these two kind of heavy metal pieces, a clamp and a military utility axe. And kind of whacked them together to make all the reload and ready sounds and stuff for the spike rifle.
You always need interesting sounds. I will hear sounds out in public or out in nature or whatever that just other people just don't even notice. It washes right over. About a year and a half ago, I was down in Ixtapa, Mexico. I swear these people sitting on the beach just thought I was insane because I had a pair of headphones on, got a stereo mic in my hand. I'm just running up and down the water, trying to get as much different water footstep sounds as possible.
Most of what we do is take all these different elements, mix it together until it sounds awesome.
And I just start listening like a chef cooking in a kitchen. You have all these ingredients. You start throwing some stuff in and say, maybe this spice will be good. Rob didn't just bang on a walk, he beat the living snot out of it. Ended up getting used as the Warthog hubcap.
I'm gonna make a recording of the hydraulic door here on my car. I have a Subaru hatchback, and I recorded my hatch opening to get some kind of a sound that kind of goes up in pitch, and then you can manipulate it to sound big. I've used that as part of like a door opening. I believe it's in waste at the moment. This is our trusty audio editor. All right, if I want it to be bigger, I can drop it down an octave or something.
When we went to go make sound for the Mongoose, I recorded a 2-stroke Vespa that I own that has an aftermarket muffler on it, which just makes it obscenely obnoxious. Then we recorded Eric Arroyo's Fiero. 6-inch fat pipes on the back, 2 of them, dual exhaust. And as I jump in it, you can hear the growl of the 2-stroke. Then you got this really growly, 4-stroke, huge sounding exhaust. And now it's the mixture of both of them.
We see the world from an audio standpoint. That's who we are.
Marty is king in the audio department. It's his gig, it's his engine.
Or, he pushes a coffee cup around the studio really well.
Yeah, I don't see work getting done here. What the heck is going on?
Marty.
Oh, do you need some makeup? Wow.
Marty's coming in here to give me a hard time.
Okay.
Whatever he says goes for the most part, and he's got the bigger, nicer studio.
He hasn't put the wet bar in there yet. We're always waiting for him to put the wet bar. For the 3 of us, it's a really nice relationship. I think part of it might be that all 3 of us are musicians. And I think that really helps.
I take music really, really seriously. I think music is a gift, and, I don't take it lightly. Closing the door, putting my hands on the keyboard, as soon as I hear something I've played that is exciting to me, that makes me go, oh, that's a cool feeling. And then I'll start working in that direction. The important thing about interactive music is that it feels like it's scoring what you're doing. I want it to sort of sneak in. I can play with all these different pieces of music, combining them so they're overlapping and layering, and this will all eventually correspond to something significant that's happening in the game. So I have lots of different kinds of pieces of music. I have pieces that I call glue that are just kind of ambient, smushy sounding pieces like this. And then if I hit play on this next piece, it would correspond to a stinger, a little shaker sound. Then we can trigger a percussive piece. And then in the percussive piece, I can say, play an alt version, which means it's going to start to get a little bit more active. I'm going to hit stop, and we'll come to a nice natural out. And what's nice about all these things is every time I hit start or stop or alt or any of that stuff, it corresponds to something that could be happening in the game. If we have a significant moment and I say, so I just brought in the low strings, a trigger will happen, and then at some natural point in the music will do its transition or its ending or whatever it is. And I try to keep it as natural as I can. You're perfect. Just keep on going.
When this is over, that hammer is going in someone's ass!
You want me to stick what?
Ouch!
He must have been real scared of me.
It's really dirty.
On Halo 3, it was really cool. We were able to record dialogue in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Seattle.
Take 2, 020 LA secret base, take 2.
And you, shipmaster, just glassed half a continent. Maybe the flood isn't all I should be worried about.
There are always moments in the game, like once you cross the river, trigger this line of dialogue.
Objective in sight! Watch for heavy armor!
But it's not like it happens at the same time every time. So we have 3 categories of dialogue, essentially. We have cinematic dialogue, we have mission dialogue, and then we have combat dialogue.
More shooting would be better, thank you.
Oh, did I shoot you? I'm sorry.
Don't stick a fork in me, sucker! I ain't done yet!
It's really important for me and Marty to get on the same page in terms of what those lines mean.
The combat dialogue is the thing that causes each AI character to seem like they're real. They'll respond in, you know, literally 1,000 different ways, and maybe they're funny.
Sen-effin-sational!
Or maybe they're scared.
I'm hit!
We have 35,000 lines of combat dialogue because we've lost our minds. And this is ridiculous. And we're trying to cover every possible situation.
This is my voice folder. It's an awful lot of stuff.
After the dialogue gets recorded, Jay has to go in and actually split them all up into individual files so the game knows to call them all separately. If the actor did multiple takes, he has to choose which take he wants.
We have 10 Marines, and one Marine actor has to get about 1,000 or 1,100 usable takes.
You got a real smart mouth on you, don't you? Kind of pretty, too.
And on the fly, the game code will go in and say, all right, he's attacking somebody with a gun, so say one of those things. Sergeant Johnson. So if he hears a foe, and he might say,
That's weapons fire. Somebody's shooting. You got cover. Bastard took cover.
he recorded 20 things. And I'll select which one's the best and pull out the others. And those are triggered randomly. If he happens to say one that's particularly funny or kind of unique or whatever, we can assign a skip fraction to it that says, hey, you know, don't play this one so frequently.
My faithful, stand firm. Though our enemies crowd around us, we tread the blessed path. In a moment, I will light the rings, and all who believe shall be saved.
Cinematic dialogue takes place during the cutscenes or the vignettes.
Until we kill Truth, stop the rings from firing.
Once I get the actors and I cut all their takes up, first thing I do is I say, okay, all you actors, like, now start talking to each other. So I do that just simply so I can balance the quality and their volume.
Jay and Marty and C-Paul apply post-processing to the alien characters, stuff that makes them sound a little bit less human. They pitch the brutes down.
Anything else, or is that all?
Killing you is almost too easy.
They pitch the grunts up.
He's pecking on me.
He's pecking on me.
The sort of the robot little tinny voice on Guilty Spark.
A wise decision, given their predilection for destructive acquisition. A wise decision, given their predilection for destructive acquisition.
So we're right about 35,000 lines total that's triggered by the dialogue system. And then you multiply that times 10 languages. Luckily, those 10 languages go into the column of Graham's problem.
Yeah, Loc is one of the biggest jobs. French, Italian, German, Spanish, and we're doing, for Halo 3, we're doing a version of Spanish that is just for Europe, and then we're also doing a Latin American version of Spanish. And then Brazilian Portuguese, and Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. And we have to have ways of verifying that, one, it matches the English, and two, that it actually gets put into the game and plays where it's supposed to. So this is the area where all of our localization testers sit. Chief, come to the back of the frigate.
What's this something special?
It's an innuendo. It's like, I got something special for you.
Jefe, ven al fondo de la fragata.
Jefe, ven para atrás de la fragata.
atrás da fragata.
프리게이트 뒤편으로 오세요.
给你一个礼物.
특별한 것이 준비되어 있습니다. Tengo algo especial para ti.
In the end, we get as much stuff as we can in and get it sounding pretty stinging good, and then we bring Marty in and we play together.
When we're playing the game with each other and against each other, we're just making sure that each one of us can really listen now to what have we created from an audio standpoint, how does it work? See, this is really hard to get work done.
Jay, you need to put a fade out on the loop.
We can be talking to each other while we're playing, like, yeah, that's too loud, that's too soft.
Well, we'll keep struggling with it until we get it right. He can listen to something that for the first time and say, like, God, that sounds perfect, but maybe we should change this other thing.
Wait. All right, don't. I promise I won't shoot. Every once in a while, I can make sure that I kill somebody and they know who's still in charge. But then they kill me. I don't understand. The final mix is where lots of stuff finally comes together. And that's when we're really testing to see if the AI that's in the game is really making the right decisions.
There's thousands of sounds that could potentially play. It has to all mix together.
But for us, it's all about variation.
You have 10 footstep sounds instead of one footstep sound that you hear over and over again, because that's annoying. the engine randomly chooses.
We actually try to hook things up in as smaller pieces as possible because it's the interaction of all those pieces that makes real life. It's like having a mixer in a box, and the audio engineer is sitting inside the Xbox and is going, oh, let's do this and that and the other thing, and mixing the volumes of the game on the fly as you go.
If a grenade goes off right next to you at the same time that a guy right next to you is talking, the audio system is making the decision about how loud to make one versus the other. It's a very, very complicated system.
We actually turn down all these different sound categories, different percentages.
We want it louder, though.
There's this smart mixer that's mixing the audio, and we just make sure that he's always making the right decisions.
You know, you could say, oh, this footstep isn't that important, right? But if you try to make every single thing you do as cool as you possibly can, then you put it all together and you got something really cool.
Dialogue and Foley and music and the cinematics and the ambience and the level and the sound of the characters running around. I mean, all this stuff comes and adds up to, you know, to make a total audio experience that hopefully is really satisfying for the player.
When they look back on their experience, they should feel like their experience was scored, but they should never be aware of what they did to cause it to be scored. Okay, that sounds good. Thanks for doing that again. That was great.